Hi everybody, nice to see you, but I actually can't see any of you. I can only see Lucy, which I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing on a webinar, but hey ho. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Victoria Moffatt. I'm the founder and managing director of LexRex Communications. LexRex is a PR and communications consultancy aimed at the legal profession. I'm a former lawyer. I left that gig about a decade ago and moved into PR. When I was in agencies, I worked with some of the UK's top 250 law firms, and after a little while of that, set up my own agency. We are based in Manchester, and we are very much up and running at the moment, notwithstanding everything that's happening. We are go, go, go. So that's me, and I'd like to introduce Lucy, who's very kindly come to talk to us today about her particular specialism. So I'll hand over to you, Lucy.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Lucy Walsh, Crystal Clear Compliance. So I'm founder and managing director. I started my business back in 2014. Business is really about me being able to support people and offer them really easy solutions to make health and safety simple but practical.
Super. Right, I hope everybody can hear that. If at any point you can't hear things or we have an issue, then do let me know, and we'll see what we can do about that. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about, and apologies for looking off to the left, I have a double screen, it's just easier for me to look to the left, that's all I'm looking at. So today we're going to be talking about creating a COVID-safe office for law firms. So basically, for those firms that feel that they have a particular business need to get back and to get back into the office, Lucy is going to sort of talk about how you might think about approaching that, the practical steps that you can take, sort of the considerations that that you might want to bear in mind. And you know, as is usual with these webinars, it's going to be quite a relaxed sort of chat. Hopefully I'll ask the questions that you'll all be thinking, but as ever, we've got the chat box, we have the Q&A box. If anything sort of leaps into your mind that you want to ask, by all means type as a question and I'll put them to Lucy, and then we should have some time at the end anyway, just for any questions that come up at the end. Cool. Okay, so let's crack on. We've done introductions. So returning to work safely. What's the kind of key point here? I think you've got one particular key point here, haven't you?
I have, and the key point here is risk assessment. It's about sitting down and going through the process before you try and get the people back into the office. So it is about doing that overview of the risk assessment. Nothing's changed in terms of the law. So the laws that are there and always have been for businesses still apply. So it's about digging out the risk assessments that you should already have in place, and now seeing what needs to change to make that a safe return, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so you say the law hasn't changed, so there's no allowances no special allowances being made for our situation?
Not really. There's nothing that I've read that's any different at the moment. What they are saying is you're still under the health and safety law and under, you know, the management regs and all of those sorts of good things. And there's a whole raft of them out there. You still have to do risk assessment, and that is, you will not know if it's safe to return if you can't do that risk assessment.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so what were we going to talk about? Oh, hang on, what have I done here? Planning, so things to consider. Yeah, so
for me, the advice that I'm giving to people is that you need to establish first of all, what the business needs are. If everyone is currently working from home, does the business need to go back into that office environment yet? If it's working quite well, do you need to change it? So you need to establish why the business needs to move back to the office or back to the working environment. It could well be that the business can move half of that function back and still keep some people working from home. So the first element and the whole process is to decide what the business really needs. Then the second part of that is to focus on your employee issues. So you need to understand if employees have issues, can they return to work? Are any of those employees maybe living with vulnerable people? Have they got concerns? Are they going to be able to come into the work at the set times? Have they got other considerations? So these are all the things that will form part of that risk assessment. And then finally, obviously, when you've established, yes, we do need to come back, yes, we've got staff that are able to come back and haven't been affected by it or need to take further time off or anything. The third part of that for me, of what I'm trying to get through to people, is the environmental side. The workplace isn't going to look the same. It's like we keep getting told, the people that have returned their children to school, the schools are not the same. So we need to consider how that environment is going to change and what measures you need to put in place to make it safe for the people to return.
Okay, so there's a few different sort of points that I picked up on there. So looking at the business needs. So, you know, if the business doesn't need to open, would you just say to people, don't open the office, just you know, work as you have been?
Yeah, I mean, if people can work from home, that is still, you know, what they are advising people to do, is if you can work from home, work from home. If you need to have that office contact and an element of the business has to come back into the office, then obviously they have to, and that's when you have to then put these other measures in place. It could be that you have to open because people do need to visit you, clients and stuff do need to visit. So, and again, that comes down to part of your risk assessment, but it's about establishing how much and what you need to do and when. And is it a phased return? Is it everybody back together? Is it, you know, you need to work out what is best for all three elements.
Okay, and do you think, is this a bit of a mindset issue? You know, are people coming to this thinking about how things used to be and hoping things will get back to normal, whereas actually perhaps what they need to be doing is thinking, actually those rules have completely, not, I don't mean the health and safety rules, but those rules in terms of, you know, how we used to operate, they're kind of dead now, and this is, you know, so changed that we need to look at it completely freshly.
I think so, because I think we've all experienced that most people are now having all these meetings via Zoom and stuff like that. People aren't necessarily traveling as much, and maybe people won't travel as much in the future. So there will be more meetings remotely. People may, you know, so things are going to change, and those things need to be considered as part of the returning process.
Okay, and then just turning to the employee issues, by the sounds of it, this, you know, the health and safety elements, the compliance elements, they don't stand alone, do they? There are, I'm assuming there are HR issues and also potentially occupational health issues. And
Very much so, yeah. So the key thing is, I'm sure we all have been, and the feedback that I've had from clients that I deal with is that they are in consultation and talking with their staff regularly anyway, whether they be on furlough or working from home. But it's to understand, yes, there is an overlap here with HR, and you need to be very careful. And whilst I'm happy to talk about health and safety things, they do need to be considered, that employees may well have other underlying health issues that may have meant that they're not shielded, but they may have concerns about coming back for other reasons. And those sorts of things should be considered, and obviously that's where you get the HR element links in, and you need to be doing the right thing under your risk assessment.
Okay, no, that's great. And then just turning lastly to the environmental issues, we talked a little bit before about proportionality. Can you just explain that, what we were saying about proportionality and cost in particular?
Yeah, so I think it's, you know, people need to consider, once you've worked out if you're going to go back, how many people are going to go back and what that's going to look like. It could mean that you just need to space desks out, or you've got adequate space anyway. It could mean that for some people, they may have to put other more costly measures in place. It could be PPE, for example. If you are going out to meet clients, have you now got to, you never had to before, but you've now got to resource PPE. So that's now a cost, and can you get it easily? Is it available? And when your stock run out, are you still going to be able to get more of that? It's also could be things like your cleaning regime in the offices. So you're suddenly going to get everyone back. Normally you have a cleaner, I don't know, whatever the routine is. And now because of this, things have got to be cleaned more frequently. So that's actually a cost.
Yeah.
So there are things to weigh up there as to how much, but nobody will know until you sit and say, right, we've got to go back. This is the only thing we can do. We've got to put all of this in place, or whatever. And is that cost effective? Can we do it? And will it work?
And presumably that sort of proportionality exercise is perfectly legitimate, you know. Yes. Assuming you, I mean, I know we're going to come on to the risk assessment and the detail, but, you know, assuming you do the risk assessment, you do it thoroughly and you do it properly, there will be some things that will just be deemed, you know, excessively expensive you know, in terms of financial burden for a business to do, that, you know,
Correct.
there is a line presumably.
There will be, and every single business will be different, every single scenario will be different, because some things, if you are in a multi-tenanted building, for example, the landlord's going to pick up on, I would have thought, on your agents will pick up on common areas, you'll just be responsible for your areas. So, or if you own the entire or lease the entire building, if the scenario is different. But at the end of the day, I always believe it's about being practical and coming up with easy, quick win solutions that will help people get back to business.
Okay, perfect. So we're finished with planning, I think, aren't we?
I think so.
Let's move on then. So the risk assessment.
So yeah, every risk assessment, in my opinion, you do need to start with the control of hierarchy. So, and anybody that's done risk assessments, or for those people that have got them already in their workplace, obviously the one thing that everyone tells you to do is to eliminate it first. Well, obviously the current scenario means that would mean we don't ever go back to work. If we were going to eliminate the risk, it means we don't return to the workplace, and that's not necessarily. Pardon?
Which is disproportionate, presumably.
Correct. Yes. So then the second part would be, you've got to substituting the hazard, and well, it's COVID, we can't substitute the hazard. That's not going to happen at the moment. It's here, and we've just got to work around it. It's not something we can physically change. And as you come down that scale, you then look at things like your engineering controls, and that would be the things that we've just been briefly talking about. So that's the desk spacing, that's maybe the one way in, that's screens between people. Those are the sorts of things that you put in place, an engineering control to put in place. And then you have systems of working. So for some people that may well be staggered start times. Instead of everyone arriving at a set time, it could be staggered slightly to allow space for people to get in freely. It could be shift pattern working. There's all sorts of little bits and pieces there that people would need to consider in the system. And then obviously PPE is always a last resort, and always should be, but at the moment with the current situation, PPE is priority as well. So if it's needed, then it has to be the right PPE, and people have to be trained to use it as part of that risk assessment process.
Okay, so I've got a few sort of points on this risk assessment point. So the risk control hierarchy, for those who haven't seen it before, I think afterwards we're going to put together, a bit like we did last week, a sort of almost like a checklist with the risk control hierarchy, and then some of your sort of top tips, which obviously anybody who wants that can get it after the event, because I think that would be really helpful. So the sort of steps or the elements 3 and 4, so the engineering controls and the systems of working, is it right to think that, you know, the sky's the limit there? You can literally think up anything that may be effective, and if it is effective, you know, use it. Like I think you mentioned, there could be some quick wins.
Yeah, definitely.
What might they look like?
So for example, the second part of that slide there clearly says that it depends on the sector, the workforce and the premises. They're all going to be different for everybody. So one thing won't necessarily suit everybody, but things to consider would be, there should already be a risk assessment in place for the premises. That's the first thing, and the jobs that happen. So you would take that one as your starting point, and then you would relook at how you can get people back in using some of those as guides. An easy situation could be if you've got a meeting room, for example. If you're really stuck on space and there's no way you can space people out in their current desking environment, you could take a meeting room, work out how many people can sit in that meeting room comfortably, remove the chairs so that nobody can, just the amount of space you've got, and then you've allowed for some extra space between people as well as what's in your office. So if you had a bank of desks and you suddenly needed some extra, maybe a meeting room's the answer. Some other quick wins there could be when you come down to doing the risk assessment, and you're looking at things like the touching of services and the entrance and coming in to points, and who touches what most, and how can we remove and reduce some of those areas. There would be things like, don't take, I'm not saying take fire doors off or anything like that to stop people touching things, because that goes against your fire risk assessment, and that's not what you do. But if you had a door, say onto a normal kitchen, little kitchenette or a kitchen area or something, you could potentially remove the door to stop people having to touch it, which then reduces your cleaning and reduces and makes people feel a little bit more happier. So this is like it's a bit of a blank canvas to work out the best way to get people back and to make them feel comfortable and safe in those environments. Changing things from suppose you have not the paper towels, but the towel rolls and stuff like that in kitchens, or even tea towels and hand towels. Change them for paper towels, because then they're just straight away disposed of. No one's got to wash them, no one's got to clean anything. It's just simple little things of changing the way you work.
Yeah, okay. And presumably you'd want a pedal bin rather than an actual touching bin to put
Exactly.
the paper towels into.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, a couple of things have sort of struck me with when you were talking about those things. The first is that with this risk assessment being sort of so sort of all encompassing, it strikes me that it could be a good way of sort of getting the team involved and to get sort of team buy-in, because you know it's your team really who are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, isn't it, when it comes to you know, the day-to-day running of an office. And actually sometimes I imagine it'll be your more junior members of the team, or less senior members of the team, who actually will be able to explain how things actually happen in real life.
Exactly. I think the whole key to this is communication. It has to be communicating with the workforce. So communicating that you're thinking of coming back, and communicating with them on maybe they've got some great ideas, like you've just said. The people that actually do the job and see it slightly differently may well suggest some really great ideas, and then that's all part of the process of getting people back, putting the ideas down, and then re-communicating the outcome and what the message will be and what the new procedure will be. I'm a big believer of, when I get asked to go and do risk assessments with people, task related risk assessments, not just building ones, but task related, the best person to sit and spend the time with is the person that does the job. And you sit with them, you observe it, you look at how they do it, and then you work with them on the risk assessment.
Okay. Is this an opportunity? You know, is this an opportunity for, I mean, obviously our audience today is law firms. Is it an opportunity for law firms to just really think differently about how their practice works?
I would have said so, yes. It may well give people a lot of opportunity to decide actually things can be done differently.
Because the big one, the obvious one is, you know, if you have property, if you have premises, and most, you know, to be fair, most law firms will still have an office, they'll still invite clients in to meet them. You know, that's a pretty big overhead, isn't it, for your business? You know, do you think we will see more firms going, if not entirely online, but certainly, you know, losing a lot of that space?
I'm not completely sure about various law firms, but I can speak from some of my clients that I've spoken to, and yes, some of them have already considered downsizing and releasing some of their office space. They will still have a presence, but they are releasing some space because they've worked out that some of their staff are able to work really comfortably at home. It's showing flexible working. They may well be getting more out of their staff because they've not got the commute. Maybe they've not got that sort of extra time, and so yeah, people are starting to look at things differently from some of the clients that I've spoken to. That's not everybody. Some people want to go back and they need to go back because the business needs them in that environment. But yes, I think people can use this as an opportunity to reassess what they really need.
Yeah, and actually just turning to those people who want to or need to be in the office, that brings us quite nicely to home workers. Presumably for those workers who decide not to, or are permitted not to come back to the office and kind of want to work from home, what's the situation for them with regards to the risk assessment?
Obviously, there's lots of people been working from home, what I will call temporarily working from home, in this very strange situation that we're seeing ourselves go through. But yeah, if any home worker has the same rights as anybody within the office, basically. So if it's to become a slightly more longer term arrangement, that could just be up until, I don't know, September, October, when people start to come out of this a little bit more, or when we know more what's going on. It doesn't matter. They still need to be consulted with, and they still need to have the right measures and stuff put in place. You can't just expect somebody to maybe keep balancing their laptop on their knee and pile it up. You know, maybe they suddenly say to you that I find it really hard because my laptop doesn't quite fit. Well, instead of, because they're not going to be there forever, maybe invest in some small temporary measures to help them. But yeah, they should still be being considered. It should form part of the risk assessment, and depending on how long they're going to be working from home for, I would recommend a DSE assessment as well, because their workplace has changed. So, you know, it would be advisable to also have a DSE assessment to make sure there are no issues.
And what's a DSE assessment, sorry?
A display screen equipment, so for your computer workstation and your desking, and it's not actually just for PCs, it's laptops. Yeah, even say these days it should be for iPads and working remotely on your devices and stuff as well.
Right, okay. So that's sort of best practice to make sure you include everybody.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's in an office has got to have one anyway, but because you've now in theory changed their office environment, it would be really good to support them and check that everything's in place for them at home as well.
Perfect. No, that's great. Anything else to say on the risk assessment slide?
No, I don't think so. I just think it should be a carefully thought through process and involve as many people as possible, as you've said.
And be imaginative, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Fab. Okay, so with this one, it's occurred to me, you know, what we've just said about involving your team. I've opened up the chat the chat ability to everybody, and I just thought, you know, whilst you're sort of talking through the suggestions and ideas, if anybody does have any sort of ideas, you know, along the lines of what you've mentioned, so I mean, obviously you're the expert, but I'm assuming, you know, any ideas that might work. If anybody does have any ideas for kind of quick wins in terms of making your office safer, things that you could do, suggestions, then please do put them in the group chat, because I think that would be really interesting basically for me to see, but I'm sure it will be interesting for everybody else to see as well. So yeah, so suggestions and ideas. I'm quite looking forward to this slide.
Yeah, I thought we'd put this one up because some people just they may not even have thought or have nowhere to start with thinking of some other solutions. So we've already talked about taking the door off of maybe a kitchen area. That's, you know, that's quite a simple one. But from the building itself, depending on how the building is laid out and who is responsible, if it is a multi-tenanted and shared area space, but it could be that you come in one door, you go out another door. If there are two, maybe like swing doors on the front of some buildings or whatever, it may well be that one is an in and one is an out, and you have a bit of marking down clearly states the routes in. So if there's a lift in the building at all, you know, you need to consider how many people can safely use that lift and put clear signage up so that it's monitored, and you've only got so that there are little things. It's not just about coming through the door and sitting at your desk. You've got to get from the bit outside too. Other things to consider could well be, depending on location, if people are not using public transport as much, they may wish to come in their car. Is there enough parking? Has it got to be split up onto a shared, maybe a rota basis or something? How's that going to work? So there are things to consider with the building element of things. Office and kitchen areas, we sort of briefly spoken about some suggestions there, such as paper towels, moving chairs away from areas. So if you have got breakout rooms, or, you know, some offices, I've got clients that have got breakout rooms with stools and stuff like that. If you work it out that actually they can only get 2 stools in that space where there's normally 4, then take the other 2 away to stop people trying to pull them in and use them just out of habit. You know, there's all those sorts of little things that you can just sort of maybe think outside the box about. Maybe I've got some clients that have said, you know, actually people need to bring their own lunch in and just sit and eat at their desk, to save the use of the microwave or things like that. So they're just trying to make temporary changes. And the last one on there I've put on is a suggestion. It's not really a suggestion, it's more of a reminder really. And that's things like, you must remember that you've got to have first aid and fire marshal cover. So even if you only bring half of the workforce back, or you bring them back on a rotary basis, then some start earlier, some start later or whatever, you must make sure that there's still cover to have cover for first aid and fire marshals, but also more importantly that you still carry on with the routine of testing your fire alarm and doing all of those good things as well.
Okay. Training, you know, getting people to actually do this stuff and comply with these new sort of processes and procedures. What's the thinking around that?
Again, communication is key, and I think because things will change, people need to obviously go through the process, plan it all, do your risk assessment, and then communicate how it's going to be to their staff. So you need to be that draw up an information page, draw up something, a communication page, just to say, this is what you're now going to do, this is how it's going to be, you come in this way, you do this, you do that, or whatever the outcome is. Even maybe share a copy of the risk assessment, because there'll be a lot of people out there, a lot of employees that will be worried about returning and will want that reassurance that everything has been put in place and that it's been considered. So sharing the documentation, sharing the process, and do that before they're going to come back to work where possible. And then also on the first day, that first initial, everyone's back in, how's it gone? You need to be talking to people, you need to be talking them through it again, obviously safely at distance, how it's going to work.
I mean, again, it comes back to that point the question I asked before around this being an opportunity. You know, it's not only an opportunity to think about new practices, it's a really good opportunity to try and start to re-engage. I mean, not re-engage your team, because I know, you know, on the whole, firms have, well, not every firm, but I'm sure most firms have been pretty good with engaging their teams and, you know, getting the work out of people and supporting them. But if you're a firm that perhaps has struggled with that, or if your team is a little bit sort of under engaged at the minute and you are thinking of bringing people back, then this again is a nice opportunity, isn't it, as a team, yes, you know, to look at how the business, how the firm, how the office is going to work. And it's an opportunity to change, isn't it? It's an opportunity to ask for people's opinions. And yes, obviously, if you are going to engage people to do this, you have to listen to them. Yes. But again, it's that opportunity, isn't it, to have those conversations.
Definitely.
Okay. I've had a couple of questions. So the first one's around home working. So should firms be providing ergonomic kit for home workers? So laptop stand, chairs, you know, that sort of, probably the stuff that will come out of the DSE.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. Yeah. So the way I advise clients to approach that one is it will all depend on the individual business's home working policy, and they should have a home working policy. And within that policy, there will be a clear definition of what a home worker is.
Okay.
So, for example, and I know, again, we're talking law firms, I'm just trying to give some suggestions and ideas, and examples. Somebody that's a sales guy, say out and about on the road, necessarily on some companies' policies would not necessarily be a home worker, because that is not his all day place of work. So they will provide him with kit like a laptop and stuff like that, but actually they need him out and about on the road. That's his job. So yes, he has to come in and maybe do some admin on his computer, but in terms of a home worker, he is not a full-time dedicated home worker. He is just that's the facility. If you are asking somebody to work from home all day at a desk to do something, then yes, I would say that is their place of work, and they need to be given the right support and equipment to meet those needs.
Presumably, though, for lots of people, that definition will have changed and will need to be reflected in the. I mean, I know you're not an employment lawyer, so I'm not asking you to sort of comment on the employment and the HR side of things. But that's presumably something that will now need to be considered, because there's clearly, you know, a risk assessment element to that, isn't there, in terms of protecting them? Yes.
So some people, obviously, if you have got people that are working from home, as I said, you would have a home working policy anyway in place. Yeah. A lot of people have now got additional people working from home, so they should have. It would have been a good idea to have a home working policy for COVID, and I've been putting some of those in place for a couple of clients. So a very simple one-page document. This is a short-term solution, but it's just because you're not normally a home worker, but this policy now applies to you under COVID for a short period of time.
Yeah, so there's a bit. Yeah, so there's a kind of almost a bridge to sort of protect both of you in the in the interim. So I've had another question around home workers, and then the question about first aiders I'm going to come back to, if that's okay, to the person who asked that one. So the next question, I've heard stories of home workers, sorry, I shouldn't laugh, working off an ironing board. That's a new one on me, because they don't have a table or a desk they can work from. And the question asks, not sure why they wouldn't have a kitchen table, which is a very fair point. But in that, I know it's ridiculous. In those circumstances, you know, do you need to give them a desk? Or do they just go to IKEA and queue for 3 hours and buy themselves a kitchen table?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, it would be coming down to having that conversation originally with from a HR point of view as well. I would have thought as to, is it suitable for you to be working from home? Have you got space to work from home? And then, you know, getting the DSE assessment in place would identify that there is a problem. Now, how that problem is overcome, again, would come down to the business and its own policy and what it wants to. Yes, they have a right to, you know, provide a certain level of equipment if that is your permanent place of work. But these are obviously unusual times and temporary measures. So I would suggest, you know, it has to come down to a bit of communication and a bit of thought, really, is the best way forward. So if the person can't work from home safely and easily, then maybe they have to be brought back into the workplace.
Right, okay. Or well, yes, they are potentially furloughed, but that's, you know,
Yeah.
we're veering into HR and employment law.
Or maybe the business is in a situation where it will support them to provide something. But again, it needs to consider, is that going to be a long-term arrangement or a short-term arrangement?
Okay, it's interesting actually. You can see that there are going to be some real issues here. For example, this person who's working from an ironing board. You know, if you're as an employer, you're saying to them, well, you can't work from an ironing board, and that's ridiculous. Come back to work, but they have somebody who's shielded at home. Then, you know, you're getting into some quite thorny issues, aren't you?
You are.
Say again.
That's where the HR element would have to come into it, and it would have to be investigated on a completely different matter, really.
Yeah.
You know, I'm looking at it that someone's got to sit safely, and if they can't sit safely, there's got to be a reason why, and you take it from there. But yeah, like you've just said, that's if they can't come back to work, then that's a different issue that would be approached in a different manner.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, actually, just on that point, for anybody that's here and that's interested, I think our next webinar is probably going to be covering specifically the HR issues that are going to naturally arise. So do sign up for that once we launch it, if that's going to be of interest to people.
If I can just quickly say one more thing on that homework in Victoria. A lot of people may well also be getting questions now as to, well, I've been working from home really well. Can I now have this as my permanent place of, you know, that's another situation. And again, that would come down to whatever the business's policies are, and they should have clear policies in place about what is a home worker and whether or not that's going to change. But then, of course, if you do get those concerns and people saying, well, I now wish to be more flexible and work from home, again, that's a HR issue to look at the correct way of going about that, or not saying they can or saying they can. But it's about, you know, making sure it's done properly.
Yeah, and again, it's an opportunity, isn't it, to look at these sort of working practices and these assumptions that perhaps people have had around what can be done from home, what can't be done from home. You know, or we need to be in an office, you know, all the time working this way, when actually, you know, it's that looking at this as an opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah, flexible working.
Okay, cool. Right, so I'm going to move on to the other question, and actually this is something we talked about before, Lucy, in terms of your first aider. How, as a first aider or as a business with first aiders, should you sort of handle the risk, or handle if this would happen in real life, somebody in the office with signs of COVID?
Yeah. So there's strict government advice on this, that all first aiders should have information and clear guidance as to how to deal with somebody that is taken ill at work and with suspected COVID. So it would be a part of the returning process should be that your first aiders are given the correct information, maybe even have their own set of PPE allocated to them, so gloves and stuff like that, and that they are given the exact current government guidance to be able to follow the procedure and how to report that incident, and how that person will get. So it will go into details of, are they well enough to go home? How are they going to get home? How do they get out of the building if they're unwell? What do they, all those sorts of good things are taken unwell at work. There is a clear set of guidance that of how a first aider should deal with that.
Fine. So there's some really clear guidance out there. Where is that? Where can people find it?
Some of that's on the government advice pages and stuff like that. We can put some links up actually in our little handout if you like, to point people to those things.
Yeah, I suspect that will be handy. And then the sort of second part to the same question is, if that scenario occurs at work and there are kind of co-workers there, is it safe then to let those co-workers stay, particularly if, you know, people who've been in close contact, or should they be sent home pending the sanitisation of the office?
Oh, it's a difficult one because it depends on where the person was in conjunction with other people. If everyone's working 2 meters apart, it's a really tricky one without actually seeing the scenario and how ill or what happened. If the person just went home up feeling slightly unwell or whatever, but yeah, most advice I would probably say is that you need to completely sanitize areas thoroughly and you know, ensure people are kept informed and that it's a safe working environment for them to come back to.
Okay, so it's again sort of that proportionality,
Yes.
looking at things proportionately, but equally not minimising, not ignoring the risk.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Right, so have we finished on suggestions and ideas?
Think so.
I think we have. So if anybody does have any, oops, a minute. If anybody does have any interesting suggestions, please do stick them in the chat box. Okay, so to summarise.
Yeah, so I think we're all aware this is not something that's going to go away quickly. This is the getting people back to work is going to be the start of this long ongoing process, because advice will keep changing and things that we can and can't do will keep changing. We all know that anyway, because, you know, is it the week after next we can go to different, we were able to go to garden centres a few weeks back and now the schools are slow. So things will keep changing, environments will keep changing. So we keep talking that the key here is communication. So it's about keeping up to date with what is being, the information that's being given by the government and by various bodies and stuff like that. It's about listening to your staff, constantly monitoring what's happening. So we've talked about the risk assessment process. Once your risk assessment's in place and you've got your people back, or you're starting to get them back in whichever phased area it is, you need to review that within a couple of weeks of being back, because you won't know if it's working unless you review it and keep looking at it. So it's, you know, fine to lay it all out, but then actually now go back and say, does it work? Is that coming in that door working? Has anyone got a problem? Is, you know, so constantly thinking and reviewing about it. And then the second part of that is obviously not only communication to the employee, but key is communication to your clients as well. So if you do have people that come, it can even be, you know, you're going to have clear signage in place for people like the postman. If you get post delivered to an office, what's his process? Because he's going to come and not wherever he leaves it, you know, is there a clear just leave it here, or you mustn't touch this? So delivery drivers, you've got to have clear instructions up and signage. And they don't have to be expensive signs. They can just be made, you know, it's simple signage that just clearly directs somebody as to what the process is. And if, for some people, if they do have a facility where clients will come or can drop in, is that changing? How's that going to work? Are they to only go to one area? And if so, is that area then to be cleaned after each client meeting? There's things there that need to be communicated and checked up on. And obviously we've spoken about making sure the staff have got all of this information and that they've been trained on anything, this whole new process of how they will work. Obviously their job itself won't change because what they do hasn't changed, but the environment that they're doing it in has changed. So they need to reflect that and constantly be giving them information. Could even be that for some, PPE is now required because they've got face-to-face contact with somebody, or they can't keep that 2 meter distance in a short search situation. So have they been trained on the correct way to use that bit of PPE if you have got PPE in place? Because it's all very, we keep hearing about it, constantly reminding staff about hand washing, you know, best practice, how you do it. And there's little things, but it's constant training and information.
Yeah, it just again, it just strikes me. I know I've mentioned it a couple of times. This idea of this all being an opportunity. You know, we've talked about the opportunity to engage with staff, but I think there's also an opportunity to engage with clients. And you know, whether you ring them, whether you write to them, whether you put something on your website, which I mean, most firms, to be fair, that I've seen have have things on the website just explaining, you know, that they've been closed. But now we're sort of at the next stage, at the next step, aren't we?
Yeah.
And actually, I think, you know, just putting my kind of PR communications hat on for a minute, what a great opportunity to get in touch with your clients. You know, we're open again, or we're not open again, but instead, you know, we're fully online, and you know, you can contact us, and these are all the different ways you can contact us. I know one of our clients use WhatsApp, not just because of COVID, but they've been using it for ages. I mean, what a fantastic option for clients that is, and probably going to be used more.
And I've written some policies, like a statement for some clients, just so that they can show that to their clients as to, this is us, this is what we're doing, this is the measures we've put in place, and that's how we're getting around this to make sure we're safe for you, sort of thing. Yeah. So, and they've been able to put that on websites and issue that out as mail shots and stuff like that to their clients, so clients are aware.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, actually, I think I can't see any reason we can't, as within LexRex, sort of set something up, you know, create a precedent that people can use. So if anybody wants to have a bit of a chat about, you know, that, if they need some help, or if they need us to look over something that they've written, then obviously get in touch. I think we can do that quite easily, quite quickly. And I think it's a sensible thing to do, because if nothing else, it's engaging with your clients, which we should all be engaging with our clients as often as we possibly can. Yeah. So again, see the opportunity, I think, there, and take it, to absolutely take it with both hands, because again, the work hasn't, some of the work's gone away, but you know, for many of us, the work hasn't gone away. You know, I'm talking specifically about law firms now. The work hasn't gone away. The firms that are going to do well out of this will be the ones that recognise the opportunities, grab them with both hands, and just run with them. Yeah. And I think, get in touch with your clients, speak to them, talk to them. It's not selling. It's not selling to go to them and say, this is what we're doing. How are you? Hope you're all right. We're just letting you know what we're doing and the procedures we're putting in place. So I think definitely do that. Update what you've got on your website already. Get some contact out there. Cool. What else is on my list of questions? I think I just wanted to pick up on the training point. Obviously, we started off by saying, with regards to the risk assessment, involve your team. Obviously, once you're rolling out whatever processes that you're having, whatever you're rolling out, and then you're asking people if they're working, then I think key, presumably, is going to be engage with them again, but then actually listen to what they say and make any changes.
Exactly. And I would use it, you know, they can do things like awareness talks, toolbox talks, communication, issue it out, get them to sign up to it, get them to read it, get them to give feedback on it. And if there's a bit where they can give feedback, that's your way of listening to what comments they've got to say, because some people may not wish to actually maybe verbally say something, they would prefer to write something down. So as long as you've given them the means to reply and say how they're feeling about what's changed and how they feel about the new setup, that's key as well, because you're then getting their buy-in and their feedback.
Yeah, and just the last point as well, things to look out for. What do we need to look out for here?
I would say poor documentation. If you haven't gone through the process and something goes wrong, then you're going to find it very hard to try and dig yourself out of that issue. The HSC have already said that they will investigate and come in and look at any, so if you've got an employee that suddenly thinks that the workplace isn't safe and has made that phone call, they will come, they will look. And if you can't seriously demonstrate that you've gone through the process and you've documented it and you've thought of everything, and shown them that you've tried to put measures in place, I think poor documentation will lead people down a lot of a troubled route, should we say. I don't think it's going to make life easy. So I think, yes, the key thing here is documentation.
Okay. I mean, in terms of good documentation, is there a framework that people can use? You know, how can they make sure that they're on the right side of this?
I think there are lots of templates out there for risk assessments. People should have their own risk assessment templates in place, but if they haven't, you know, you can easily download risk assessments, or you know, by all means, I'm happy to be spoken to afterwards, and if people want some advice and guidance. But you know, as long as it doesn't have to necessarily be in a set format, it's more important that you've actually done it, thought about it, written something down, and you can see where people have tried to make a difference. That's always key. It's when there's nothing there at all, even if it's something that's been written quite roughly, and here's my ideas, and we decided we were going to do X, Y, and Z. You can show something. It's it's about having something. But obviously, if I was to advise anything, it's to do it properly and think about it and get everything in order.
Okay, lovely. And then anything else sort of to look for over and above the documentation side of things?
Well, I can't think. I think it's just really is to watch and see how employees are behaving when things change and what they're talking about as well. But that comes down to the communication and the feedback from them and how they're feeling. So yeah, I think it's keep up to date with everything that's being announced, watch out for new alerts and stuff like that, and make sure everything's documented and communicated. And nobody can then say, I didn't get told not to do this, or I didn't get told something. So it's just that constant review.
Constant vigilance.
Constant vigilance and constant reviewing. Yeah, people just need to look at it. It's not frightening. It needs to just be thought about and done sensibly. And if you can make a process easy to do, then people will follow it.
In terms of future webinars, like I said, I think the next one we'll probably try and run around the HR issues that we've sort of briefly touched upon today. And again, if there's anything specific that anybody wants us to cover in future webinars, then let us know, stick it in the group chat, or just drop me an email or contact me on social media, whatever. I'm not seeing any questions, so unless one comes through shortly, I think we'll probably finish shortly. So thank you so much, Lucy. That was really, really, really insightful.
I just hope that some people have taken, even if it's just a little bit of advice away or a pointer to get them started. That's the whole point.
Yeah, no, it's great. And again, my big takeaway from this, as the eternal optimist, is what a fantastic opportunity to look and review your business and work out how you're doing things and whether the way you're doing things is the best way, the most effective way.